they're doing what they can with what they have. You know,
I see.
You know, just oh man, it was. Well, all right.
At least I had one.
At least I had one. I was excited.
Yeah, I just looked at them. They're both up and good.
Okay, thanks.
So you're our students. So I'm David Couch, and responsible education to have school district over here.
I'm glad it's here. Yeah, don't we get one in the day? I don't think it's equipment, it's what we're getting.
Kentucky was the first state. So he said he's California
We didn't get much publicity on it, if you'll just read the headlines, like,
Was this in or on?
the moon pie, supposedly, in Kentucky, Harlan County, Kentucky, coal miner,
Oh.
talked to a vendor and told him what kind of snack he'd like to have. And he said he went up the window and it was full moon, he puts his hand up there, he said, I want one as big as the moon.
Huh.
And, so the guy went back and his company created that moon pie.
That is interesting. I did not know that. So where did this article come from?
Jeff pulled off the internet. Actually, I think he has a copy.
I was gonna say, can you send it to me or get it?
We got several copies.
Oh, do you? Okay.
We got several copies.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Andy, how you want to rotate the students in? Just get ready to go right here. So, you better grab one. Only like for 5 minutes. After this one,
That's a good story on the moon pie. Have you heard that story?
No.
About supposedly a miner at a coal mine here told the company what kind of snack he wanted, and that's how they come up with that company went back and done the moon pie. They said it's a legend. They don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, supposedly that's how the moon pie come about. We got some stories about moon pies.
Yeah.
Megan, is anybody there with you yet? She's on there.
Yeah, Megan, that's true. We got some other people hopefully joining us, right? Megan, are you there?
She was. Do we want to open up the questions, or we want to keep them locked until we bring them up, until we ask?
Go ahead and open.
Go ahead and open them, Andy.
Let me try to get him over here.
this way, so you'll be sitting here.
And your folks will be there. So Turner right there and David. And then the students will be filling in right over there. It doesn't matter either one. The students, I think, are going to fill in at the end.
Mentioning the Cisco.
Welcome to our October edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIO and Education Technology Leaders webcast across the state of Kentucky. I'm David Couch. Thanks for joining us this morning from Harlan County. We're at James A. Kaywood Elementary here in Harlan County. You know, the thing is, I noticed right away on this drive, and I'm going to let the Harlan County folks introduce themselves. There was a TV show on the air for a long time called Justified, and the thing that stood out to me, besides Raylan Givens was so cool, and everybody wanted to be the Raylan Givens character, but it only took 15 minutes to drive all the way from Lexington to Harlan County, which always stood out to me. In Frankfurt, whenever he made a drive back and forth, that was 15 or 20 minutes. It's a little bit longer. That's about a 3-hour drive to here, but it's great to be here in Harlan County and join you and your team. I'm joined here with Mike Lettingham and Bob Hackworth. This is our opportunity to share some things going on in Harlan County, but also things going on around the state and around the nation. We also have opened up Go Soapbox. This is our way to get two-way feedback from folks throughout the state of Kentucky. So take a look at I sent out this morning the poll questions and the discussion questions, but as usual, anything you want to talk about as it bubbles to the top, we have people here that are closely looking at that, and we'll discuss that. So I'll turn now to Harlan County. Superintendent Rourke, thanks for being the host this month with you and your team. So if you could give a little background of the district to those that have never been here, as well as introducing some of the other folks that we have.
Absolutely. Harlan County is located in remote southeastern Kentucky. We have 8 K-8 schools and 1 high school. Our enrollment is, in 1993, our enrollment was 6,200 students, and currently we're at 3,800 students. So one of the things that we face, that we look at each year, is the issues that go along with declining enrollment. That's something that we have to struggle with. Currently, we have 5 4-star schools, 9 3-star schools, and 3 2-star schools. So we did pretty well on the recent accountability.
Absolutely.
When I give those numbers, everyone knows that our schools are divided into elementary and middle, so it kind of doubles the number of our schools. We run about an 85% free and reduced lunch rate, and we're very proud of the schools we have, and we're incredibly happy to have Mr. Couch and his staff with us today. I think that's been the highlight of Mr. Burkhart's, maybe the highlight of his career is having him here. He's really enjoyed getting ready for this. He's been very excited about it. So,
Yeah, I worked with Mr. Couch all through the year, but
and finally get to have him
nice
here in
when he comes
Harlan. We're very pleased with that.
It's been, I think I was here when you opened up the high school.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate it. David's always been an outstanding teammate with us at the state, and patient in working with us and through us, and being a good, like I say, teammate to help us on what we do statewide, just not here in Harlan County. But you also have a moon pie story that supposedly the moon pie originated here.
Yeah, I think David gave everyone a little copy of the moon pie and how it was taken into the coal mines by the early miners. That was one of the things they took in their lunch bucket.
And some miners said what would be the perfect meal or the perfect thing that they wanted, pick me up, and supposedly it came from here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how nutritious that is.
We also have Senator Turner.
Senator Johnny Ray Turner and David Burkhart are on the panel with us this day.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Senator, you've been a great teammate of obviously education technology for us for a long time. Just like your thoughts about education technology in general from a legislator's perspective.
Well, first of all, thank you, David, for being here today in Harlan County. And Mr. Roark, thank you for having me here. And Jeff Phillips, thank you for the invite and the communications that you keep me up to date on what's going on. Well, I've been in the legislature now for 19 years and been represented several counties, but since 2013 I've represented Harlan County. And Harlan County is a lot like the other counties that I represent. Most of them are coal producing counties and have had a lot of declining coal production in those all 4 counties that I have, which is Floyd, Knott, Letcher, and Harlan now. And I'm on the education committee and have been ever since I've been in the legislature, and I'm a retired educator. I'm retired after 28 years of teaching and coaching basketball, and I'm also a member of the Southern Regional Education Board Advisory Committee, and also a member of the Career and Technical Education Task Force. So I'm happy to be here to support, show support for technical education, and I think that there's going to be an emphasis on that this legislative session.
Yes, yeah. David, you've been in this role, you've been in the district 21 years?
21 years,
And
yes.
as a CIO EdTech leader for,
20.
yeah, a good amount. So you're, I mean, out of all the CIOs we have across the state, you're one of the most senior ones that we have, obviously. Give us a little background on the technology in the district, and also I know we have some students that are going to come up and tell us about what you're
Right.
doing in your web design,
Right.
and their teacher as well. Yeah,
Yes.
please come up. So David, just some background about your district, education technology-wise.
Well, again, we got 8 elementaries and high school. Always an issue keeping things going and we always keep things equal
Right.
between our elementary schools and our high schools and
And I know you switched to a pretty big investment in Chromebooks, as we were talking about, and you've seen somewhat.
yes, we are about 50% Chromebooks, 50% Windows
Yeah.
systems now.
And I know we were talking a little bit earlier with the superintendent is, as you go to Chromebooks, it eliminates the need for so many labs. Does it maybe totally eliminate them? But definitely you can shift from all the labs you have, definitely if the students are carrying them
Right,
around.
and that seems to be the way to go,
Yeah.
is get away from the labs.
Yeah, yeah. This is a good spot for your web design crew to come up here with your teacher and the students. I got to meet with them a little bit earlier. I have a quiz, a quick quiz for your students right before they start, so come on up for their students.
I think they'll do well.
What was the first state to have every district and every school connected to the internet? Was it Florida? Was it California? Was it New York? Or was it Kentucky?
Kentucky.
Now, the reason I said that earlier, I did ask them that question ahead of time. And, you know, and honestly, they would not have picked Kentucky. And I told them, it saddens me that so many of even our own students don't realize we're the national leader in so many categories. Not that we're perfect, but we're the pioneer national leader. So what they're getting ready to do has a lot to do with us being that pioneer and getting all of our schools connected and being the first to do that. There are still a lot of states that don't have all their schools connected, even 2 decades after we did it. And so for me, being part of that, and actually Mike and Bob were part of that, those early days in the 90s of getting the schools connected and a lot of other things going along with that. This is the fruits of that labor. We can now do the things that you're doing in your class and the service that you provide. So I'll let you give an overview of that.
Sure. My name is Scott Pace. I teach web design at Harlan County High School. And in 2010, we started an advanced program to where we started to build websites for churches and businesses and nonprofit organizations across the nation. We've done websites from Alaska to New York, and we currently have websites across Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia. And what you had talked about as far as, connectivity and availability of the internet, where we're at in a rural environment with a damaged economy, they've got the world at their fingertips. So we're able to reach out to different communities and help struggling businesses and organizations that need the branding process. They need a logo, they need a website, and they need marketing. And that's what we do within the classes that I teach at the high school. And the students I have with me, this is Kaylee Ramsey, Kay Pennington, and Jared Creech, and they've done an outstanding job over the past couple of years within that program and developed a number of websites. And I think Kay will talk to you a little bit about he's actually wanting to start his own business, and he just got a job based on his skill set within graphic design. Yeah. So they've done an outstanding job. But I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'll let them tell you a little bit about what they've done and the work that they've completed and a little bit more about our program. You can find more information if you go to the Harlan County High School website and you go to web design. You'll see the list of websites that we currently have active now. And we do them for all the elementary schools, including JC's. We do them for, like I said, churches, business, nonprofits. We do it for all the athletics and clubs within the high school. So they have an opportunity to work real closely with clients, in a real environment and earn some money along the way at times. So I'll let you guys start.
So as you mentioned, my name is Caitlin Ramsey, and we're enrolled in the website design and production and information and technology internship at Harlan County High School. And in these classes, we use skills we developed from the web page development class to develop and maintain websites for businesses and nonprofit organizations, both locally, and as he mentioned, even to Alaska and New York. And all of our services and maintenance is completely free, but we do accept donations. And so when we're assigned a site, we start by contacting the owner, and then we start to plan, lay out the structure, and organize the website to fit their needs and wants. And then when we do that, we purchase hosting and a domain name, and then we train them how to do that as well. And we use many different editors and methods. We use HTML, CSS coding, Dreamweaver, and Wix, just to name a few. And it usually takes about 2 weeks to make one. And personally, I've redesigned the Harlan County High School bookstore website. And I'm also in the process of redesigning the Talent Search Club website for our school. And I'm also adding pictures and other features to a website of a business in Virginia, too. So I really enjoyed this, and one thing I really liked about it and appreciate is how making a website is very important to any business or organization, because sometimes that might be the only way someone gets in contact or the first contact with them. So that can really make a big impact on whether the person will want to contribute to it. And I've also enjoyed connecting with people in the business world and learning to communicate better. So I think I can use these skills in many different areas of life, so it's been enjoyable.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm Kate Pennington. I'm a senior at Harlan County High School. The Advanced Web Design program has opened up a lot of opportunities for me. It's gotten me ready for the future. I've created several websites, including sports teams for the school, businesses, churches, and other little businesses that I've done on my own time. I was able to find what I was best at in web design through that program, and I've actually found a job where these skills that I have are actually needed. I hope to start a graphic designer business in the future, because this is something I can see me doing for the rest of my life. I really got into it with Photoshop. I love making logos for people. That's what I really enjoy most, and it's just opening up a lot of opportunities for me.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jared Creech, and as of last year, I managed 4 websites, 2 of them being completely made from scratch. One was the fishing team, and one was actually our Frisk website. And these websites, they don't, especially our sports teams, it helps promote these sports teams, especially the fishing team. Last year, we just started the fishing team, and we've had people you can make a contact page, and you can get them to ask whatever you want. It goes straight to our head coach. So people have actually asked questions about our fishing team, how to join, whatever the case is. But this is going to be my second year in the web design class. I actually came in and I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I had some part of the technical part.
I'll interject really quickly. Jared came into the advanced class and had not had the beginning class.
Yeah.
And he stepped in,
Go get her.
did an outstanding job. Outstanding job. So I told him, I said, I don't know if this is going to work. And I didn't know him at that point, but he stepped in and he made it happen. He picked it up really quickly.
But it's continuing to grow, and just like they said, it's the communication skills, being able, as far as technology has come, to be able to get on the computer and actually work the computer. Not a lot of people know how to do that, and now that in the job career that I'm going to, which is nursing, they have completely cut all paper records. Everything is now technology-based.
Yeah.
So that will definitely help me in my future.
Yeah. It's a neat, the thing, I do agree that the range of skills you get, because this is the public facing of most organizations. Katie has the same thing. And so working with people is, what do you want to say immediately to folks and guide them? Because I know that's one of the first things to do is go to the website of anybody and try to get a feel for it, including you all. I mean, when I was coming here, is always prepped by looking at the district itself, and so good job on the website, by the way. Appreciated it. Yeah.
Jared, I know how hard it is to go from, instead of taking 101 and you went to 102.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I thought I wanted to be an accountant, and I tried to get in accounting 101.
Yeah.
And it was full, so I decided I'd take accounting 102. It didn't work.
I got it. I loved it though.
Yeah. You didn't drown, sounds like you were able
No.
to swim. Yeah. I think the other part, the tough part with websites, I say, is people keeping them up to date. There's usually a lot of excitement building them, but there's some coaching that has to go on, keep it up to date, because if you don't, people stop coming to it. So is that part of the process at all as you work with these sites?
Yeah, we do a lot of maintenance on the sites each day.
Yeah.
They provide maintenance as we go through the course, and they also have an opportunity to work with the clients and train them on how to provide their own maintenance. So we've got people that come in, we get them started, and then we bring them in, we sit them down, and they actually have an opportunity to work with them side by side and show them how to provide, the maintenance for the website, tweak their logos, whatever it is that they need, and help them with the marketing. And they do, work with meta tags and SEO and a number of different technologies. So.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We have some other people that will be joining us, I think remotely. We also have our own Judy Evans here in the audience, and she is our field staff member for how many districts, Judy?
31.
Just 31, the biggest in the state. So I appreciate your good efforts to help represent, because Judy is actually my representative. She represents me in those 31 districts. She does a really good job. I appreciate Judy's work. And I don't know if we have Frankfurt. Is that working yet, Andy? Have you had a chance to work on that?
Just make sure we can hear them, because they can hear us.
Sure. Okay. So the first item up is just, I'm going to go through these items we have here, is our additional budget request. I've talked about this in our previous webcasts. An update, we have to present that. Had to present that to the board, the Kentucky Board of Education, and for them to make it a priority. That was presented here in early October, and they agreed with us of the need to make that one of their top 4 priorities for additional budget requests. And just a reminder of what we requested for is additional funds to deal with the people side of education technology. And so what we're finding is this explosion of devices, just not computers, but the technology staff being involved with all aspects of technology of a district, from the phone services, their security services, to their heating and air conditioning services, is just the amount of additional staff that most districts are needing, with their technicians, digital learning coaches, folks dealing with cybersecurity and the data side of it. So a big part of the additional budget request is try to address the people side of education technology. And so for those that are familiar with it, I have traveled around the state, going to nearly every cooperative, every group, and talking about the paper that we created, the first in the United States, that talks about this need, and I present it to my peers across the United States, and they're also using the same exact document. But it gives a way for folks to identify what positions they need and how many they have. And what we're finding in Kentucky K-12 is we're tremendously understaffed, and so part of it tries to address that. The other part is online testing. We know students and we know teachers like to get the results back quickly, whether it be a daily test, an interim test with MAP or PASS, or a summative test like with K-Prep, which they take at the end of the year. And so we would like a way, one of the best ways you can do that is with online testing, is get those results back very quickly. And so once again, because Kentucky has the infrastructure in place, and not that we're 100% perfect, but compared to other states that have tried to do large-scale online testing, I would say Kentucky is the national leader, especially any state touching Kentucky or around Kentucky that has recently tried it. And so just so you know, in the next year and 2 years, we're going to really be scaling that up. And obviously we need the infrastructure, maybe beef it up just a little bit more than it is to handle that. And so that's part of the additional budget request, along with beefing up the cybersecurity. We have 4 billion attempted cyber attacks on Kentucky K-12 every year, and these folks are getting much more sophisticated in their methods and the tools that they're using to do that. But also addresses, since 1992, with the birth of the Kentucky Education Technology System, we've never had a cost of living increase since 1992. And basically been doing it with the same budget we've had since 1992. And because of the housing and mortgage crisis of 2007, our budget has been significantly cut for technology. So we've been able to be the national leader by a pretty good margin, but we start dropping off if we don't do something to address those previous cuts and the lack of cost of living increases. So those were the 5 main points that were given to our state board that now it goes through the legislative process. And so Senator Turner comes, now it comes through that, goes, I think, through the governor's office, and then goes to the House and Senate. Is that correct? Is that the process it goes
The
through?
process, the governor will start the budget, and then the House of Representatives receives it first. They make some changes, they mark it up and make some changes. Then it comes to the Senate, and they'll do the same. Then when nobody agrees on everything, we go to a free conference committee,
Right.
and then we'll work on the final draft of the
Right.
budget.
Right. And I
And
know
that
you-
comes up this year.
And I know you've been part of all those throughout the entire process. And so, but this was an important step for us to be a state board priority. And as I remind all of our districts, it's important for you and your positions to educate your superintendent, your chief financial officer, and your legislators on the importance of the technology, the increase of the funding. And they're trying to balance a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different things that that you have to face. But you have to say, this is why it's important, and here's the difference it makes if we get the funding and put that in place. So just want folks aware that so far, so good, but the next step now is now through the legislative process.
Well, you've got some good people working on this, on the funding.
Yeah.
David Horseman has done a really good job, and you know, you have Mike Wilson as chairman of the advisory committee or task force,
Yeah.
and Bobby McCool. So those guys will be advocates for funding, and
Yeah.
Look forward to working with them on that.
Right, so appreciate your support through the years with it, and I know you'll be supportive as well. We did have a successful launch of our school report card. This is something that went statewide, and I would really say if you looked at the school report cards, I think Kentucky is just one of the best, and I just don't say just go out there and kind of take a look at them. And I appreciate all the staff time. I know a lot of our staff time went into the technical aspects of that school report card, which is supposed to, much like a website at a very high level, give a health check of a district for the state overall and for a district, but also give them some ability to granular keep up with the data of their students through the parent portal. So, you know, from a district's perspective, how was the school report card as you've looked at it? I know there's some parts of it not filled in.
Right.
So what's your view of the school
Like
report?
I said, Mr. Couch, I think it gives a really good snapshot of what's going on in our district. I was looking at it yesterday, was going to Ross Point Elementary to do a presentation with them, with their staff on our accountability results. And it was the easiest way for me to just pull up accountability and look at it with a quick snapshot to see what was going on in that school. And as you said, once the demographic information is populated in there, I think it'll be an even more useful tool.
Yeah, there's parts of it. Bob, you were with me in Minnesota, and we were with our peers from around the United States, and Alabama was presenting theirs.
They had just created a statewide report card of their own and had made some interesting choices, David. For instance, they had decided to remove as many words from their report card as possible, including descriptions and things like that. A lot of the narrative that you might expect would be on a report card were gone in favor really of just graphs and images. And they did that, in their words, to make it more accessible to folks who might have lots of different levels of education in their state. And so they wanted it to be very, very engaging and not difficult to understand.
And we talked about this during breakfast. I also think that the difficulty we have in our world is removing the eduspeak, because you have a lot of education terms that are fairly meaningless to most parents. And so I think also a big part of that initiative, I know ours was, is try to make it in the average person. I call it Waffle House speak. So anybody that's been around me knows I spend a lot of time at Waffle House. And so anyone sitting to your left and right, you should be able to describe, no matter how technical and complex your world is, in simple ways the average person can understand. And so I think that's always our goal, to do that, and I think they did something
They did
similar.
a really good job of that, maybe removing too many words, but definitely something to look at and a model, and we'll be looking at that soon.
The other part of our school report card is just not just the annual snapshot, but is to try to highlight, and we really have something there that highlights our student and our student and parent portal, and allows the student to see their daily progress with their grades, with their assignments, and with their attendance, and the parent the same way. And once again, and I always hope folks appreciate, and I'll talk about this a little bit, is how unique and what a good position Kentucky K-12 is in education technology compared to the other states. So we're able to do things no other state is able to do, specifically the school report card, the student and parent portal, is all the other states are trying to create it. And they have multiple data systems, student information systems. It's very difficult to make it work, and we have one, and we're one of the unique states to have one. But the sadness I have in doing that is we still have a high percentage of parents that don't know it exists. We know that a parent, and I know this with my 4 children as they got older, they were less likely to share with me things that were going well and not going well. And so if they got a 25 out of 25 when they were in elementary school, they were running home and showing me with it in their hand. As they got older, they didn't do that, and vice versa. The same thing with outstanding assignments. And it's a way for a parent to remain engaged. And we know a parent that's engaged with a student, that student is a lot less likely to drop out. And so when I was up in Minnesota, the headquarters for Infinite Campus is just 20 minutes north of there. The real 20 minutes, not the justified 20 minutes, but the real 20 minutes. And their data match what we're finding here in Kentucky. It appears only 1/3 of the parents nationwide and in Kentucky that use the Infinite Campus parent and student portal actually get on it. The parents. The students, a lot much higher percentage. The parents is 30%. And part of this is how can we get the word out for parents to know it exists versus just sending out, a piece of paper beginning the school year. I noticed on your all's website, you're trying to, you have something there that advertises it. In the school report card, we do the same way. And we talked a little bit earlier, you have the one-call service.
Yes, sir.
And, could that be part of the toolbox of sending out a one-call, reminding parents there's a service that allows them to, with their smartphone. And despite the economic situation, nearly everyone has a smartphone with a data plan. So what would be your approach to get, and I don't know what percentage, I don't know if you've tracked, I didn't ask you ahead of time, what percentage of your parents actually get on the student parent portal to increase this, instead of just 1/3, at least have 90% aware of it? What would your thoughts be to do that?
One of the things, like you're alluding to, that we see is when our students start out in the elementary school, we have a lot of parent engagement. Parents are really involved. They're involved in academics. They're involved in their students' athletics, 5th and 6th grade ball games, 7th and 8th grade ball games, in academic competitions. We have huge parent attendance at those events. But as the kids get older, the parent support tends to wane away. One of the things that we have at our disposal that you mentioned was our all-call system. That's a very effective system for us. It's ran by one of Mr. Burkhart's workers, Mike Scott. He does a great job with that. And we have the ability to send out an all-call to every one of our parents and all of our support staff can do that. We did it last night trying to solicit workers for our cafeteria program. Right now we don't have enough workers in our food service department to fill all the spots. And we're very short on bus drivers. So we did that last night, promoting those 2 programs. We use it sparingly so we don't abuse the system. But that would be an awesome way for us to let folks know that Parent Portal is out there, or to remind them that it's out there. They advertise it on our website. We tell parents when they come to school, but all too often the parents that come to school to check on their kids are the ones that are using Parent Portal. That's not the ones you're talking about reaching.
Right.
So that all-call system for us would be a really effective, efficient, cost-free way to reach all of our parents at one time.
So we just got to find a way. We have a really unique way to make parents aware of what their the children are doing and the outstanding assignments they have, and stay engaged with them as they get older. I know as a dad, it was a wonderful way as my kids got older to be able to ask them questions that they weren't just going to bring up like they did in elementary school. So the other part of that trip was I got to meet with my peers from the other 4 United States. I wish more Kentuckians could see how respected Kentucky is at those meetings. I wish they could. It's just like I was so sad that virtually no student knows all of our schools are connected, and we were the first one to do that. I wish so many others could see how greatly respected the state of Kentucky is in education and technology by our peers. A lot of sessions we're asked to lead, and once again, not that we're 100% perfect in doing it, but their issues, for example, most states have like all these multiple school information systems. So they spend tons of time and energy trying to make apples to apples, which they'll never really truly be able to do. They spend a lot of time on cybersecurity, which we are knowledgeable in part of those discussions. Also esports, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I gave a presentation on esports, and even the leader of the Council for State School Officers attended my session to be educated on esports. And so I've talked about those in the past couple of webcasts, and sent you an attachment here I'll talk about here in a little bit. But Bob, you also attended, Bob attended with me. Any other highlights that you would bring out from a cybersecurity? I know you attended the cybersecurity for me.
I did, yes. There were a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. Of course, the esports session was really one of the best attended sessions, I have to say. I mean, everyone was kind of interested in how that was going to go.
Yeah.
But the sessions on school report cards were very well attended, and there was a lot of questions about how the data on the back end of that are secured. There was a ton of sessions around FERPA and student privacy right now. And then other than that, school safety was also a very hot topic. And the idea of our parents and our schools knowledgeable about what FERPA does and what it does not do, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and helping, how can state departments help districts and parents become more knowledgeable about how their students' data are being used or should be used and protected for some of the key components out there. And I collected a lot of information over the course of the conference that I'll be sharing out with the CIOs over the course of time.
I noticed one of the titles was "It Can Happen to You, But Don't Let It." And of course, they gave us credit for us actually having the document for that.
That's right, and they gave us credit. They said a lot of you might be expecting Kentucky to be here presenting this, but we just stole their title. That was actually the education department presented that, and they used the title,
National Education Department.
The National Education Department, and they went over a lot of the same beats that we go over when we present that as well, showing how lots of folks are being scammed in very similar ways, and they need to protect themselves and be more aware.
I think the theme across America is, you always got to do the technical things to protect it from these cyber attacks, but the cyber criminals are really going after the people side. And trying to work that angle of going, change my bank account to this location, go get so many iTunes cards, because the superintendent or principal, we've had that happen. A teacher somebody was pretending to be the superintendent, asked the teacher to go get 20, or I guess it was 5 $200 iTunes cards. Of course, that didn't happen, and they gave them the iTunes numbers, and they were off to the races with that. So it is across the country of just how do we get the average teacher, the average staff member, and even the average student a lot more savvy in this world of cybercrime, not to turn into jaded people like Bob and myself.
That's right, that's right. And I thought the very interesting thing was that there were a couple of very small mentions of technical security, where people were talking about firewalls and things like that, but the overwhelming focus was on people security. And because that's where a lot of people, that's where all the states are seeing their greatest risk right now.
Yep. So where did Andy go?
He's fine, he had
Okay. So do we, I guess we'll bring in Dee Dee because we have a school report card.
Ready to do right now?
Yeah. Okay. So Andy, we ready to bring in Frankfurt?
You bet.
All right.
I fixed my phone to make sure I can stay in contact with the team.
All right. So I just want to give Dee Dee, if Dee Dee's on the line, a chance to talk about school report card. I know we had a Go Soapbox question as well as a poll question associated with it. I know I'm sure you guys are following those.
And while we're doing that, there was a comment on our Go Soapbox that said, "Hello, Mr. Pace, former student here, having access to these classes in high school helped me choose my career in IT." So I don't know who that was, but it was a former student. So.
Yeah, in one of our technology positions in the district. So he was up to you. So can let's see if we hear Dee Dee. Dee Dee, go ahead, and we'll see if we can hear you here. Nope,
Not here.
nope, we don't hear you here. All right, so we'll come back. We'll come back to you. Can we bring up the poll questions, discussion questions?
Just check that. Just press the button.
Here?
No.
Okay.
That should be, it's on.
Okay, there we go. Okay, now, okay. All right. All right, Dee Dee, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we did have some feedback from the survey question, the snowball question, I should say, and those that are participating and using the school report card collection feature at the school level, for the most part, feel that's valuable. And as we reflect on year 2, we're reaching reaching out to different groups, trying to find out what went well, what didn't work well before we meet with Bright Bites on planning for year 3, which, believe it or not, starts next month. So thanks for that feedback. The collection tool at the school level is not something that the state level we use. We just look to see if the districts have approved data at the district level only. So it's there for districts to use. So that's good feedback. The other thing that's come up, and we had a response to soapbox feedback, is we need to be more consistent in our technology questions. And I want to thank Ben Maynard for stepping into that role, and he and Marty and the KEs are going to be working with CIOs across the state to see if we can't fine-tune those questions to make sure that they make sense to you. Some of those questions are around what CRDC is requiring, the civil rights data collection, but others are more of a just a historical, workstation, devices. We can get some consistency there without a problem. So we do still have a lot of disconnect between what we're collecting at the school level as far as number of devices and what we're collecting, and that's in the school report card, versus what we're collecting at the district level at the in the digital readiness report. So, the intent is to try to use what we collect in the school report card so that we don't have to collect it again in the digital readiness report. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're quite there yet. And one of the things that comes up is sometimes it's different people entering the data, maybe the principals entering the information versus the CIO entering the information. And so, we would encourage that communication to happen locally on how best to manage that so that those collections do align. Right now, we're not rolling up the information at the district level and the state level, and one of the reasons we chosen not to do that is because of the differences in the numbers. So as we go into year 3, hopefully we can all plan together on what will work better for going forward in that reporting.
Thank you.
So we do want to continue to gather feedback. We've got advisory groups, different individuals that we're reaching out to. There's an opportunity today in the soapbox to add comments, but even if you get comments from some of your parents, others that come up within the school, encourage them to go out to the school report card feedback option at the bottom of the page, the bottom of every page, and provide them with some feedback, because we do use that. Changes and input we got from the first year did go into refining for year 2, and that'll be a cyclical process every year that will make sure that we gather feedback for where we can improve. That's all I really have on school report card right now, David. If you have anything else you want to cover here, let me know. But
all right, thank you. Appreciate it. Mike is going to give an update on, there's a report coming out with the State Education Technology Directors Association. They'll be presenting in Washington, D.C. in early November. And also either today or tomorrow, the Education Superhighway comes out with their annual report. And I got to tell you, and I'm going to let Mike go into details, that my peers, any state that closely keeps up with the actual utilization of the bandwidth, which Kentucky does, which means we closely monitor what every one of the 170 school districts is using for bandwidth and how much they're consuming. Not exactly what all they're using on it. We count on the district to do that, but we can keep up with the amount of bandwidth that they're consuming coming out of the district. You would think every other state they can do that. They can't. Very few states, it's less than a handful of states that I can tell, actually have a handle on the actual utilization of the bandwidth. And so, to me, that's trying to be a good steward of taxpayer money as we go forth to the legislature and ask for more funds. I always feel more comfortable because we can show a lot of different variety of ways that we're maximizing the current investment. For example, having a standard financial management system across the state, the same school information system, and the standardized internet system. Kentucky is the only state in America that has that. And we can show significant cost savings by taking that approach. The same is with the standard. So the group that Mike talked about with CETA came up with a 1 meg per student standard. And that takes a look at bandwidth desired versus what actually bandwidth is actually needed.
Yeah, and just to go back to the point you were making, what we really have in our education network here in Kentucky is a scalable model. we have the capacity to go to high levels of bandwidth as needed anywhere. And when I say as needed, it's not a matter of just flipping a switch and it doing it, but within a very short time frame, if a school district has done things that's going to increase their requirements of bandwidth based on their utilization, usage, and so forth, in a fairly quick turnaround time, we can provide the additional capacity required to that we're paying for. Versus just, opening up a high amount of bandwidth everywhere and paying for that and only utilizing 30 or 40 or 50% of it, which is what we get compared to a lot of times in some other locations, some other states, where they're paying for a higher amount of bandwidth and they're only utilizing it, 30 or 40 or 50%, but yet on reports it will show that they've got this high volume of bandwidth. And so that's what, getting to the reports from the Education Superhighway, which actually went live this morning.
Okay.
I just found out.
Okay.
So that is actually live. So if anybody wants to look at that, if you just Google search or do a search for Education Superhighway, you'll be able to find a report. And on that report specifically, an area of concern we have is this target that has been identified. Several years back, we all agreed that we should have a minimum amount of bandwidth that's available per every student of 100K. And that was a baseline, just saying that, at all times you should have a minimum of that. Well, since then, there's been groups of people that have tried to come up with these targets about what is the ideal amount. And part of the challenge with that, and what's been publicized quite often and through previous CEDAR reports is 1 meg per student. The challenge with that is it's based on a variety of variables. And back to David's point, it doesn't take into consideration how well and how efficient how well your network's designed, how efficiently it operates, and then how efficiently you actually utilize it. And so again, we've got this really kind of like an artificial target out there, and in the Education Superhighway, we will show as having 0 of our school districts that are meeting that as a, always available 1 meg per student, because our utilization doesn't require that. And again, we will increase as needed based on utilization, based on user satisfaction and performance. And it's hard for us to identify any other state or any other really districts in other states that are really measuring that. What is the performance? What is the reliability? What is the user satisfaction? What is the utilization? And really working a scalable model. So on both of these topics, Education Superhighway, reports live out there today. There's been improvements they've made. Y'all have heard us talk about Education Superhighway multiple times. It's a continuing kind of relationship that we are working with them as far as how they do their reporting, what they base their information on, which you've heard us speak to before. They base a lot of their information on E-rate data and not other data that also impacts what's actually going on in networks in the states and in the districts. But their reports are better, but they still do have us showing as no districts meeting that 1 meg per student, which we are fine with explaining why and how that works. But unfortunately, sometimes you don't get an opportunity to explain it when somebody just sees a national report.
And I'll give you I'll give you the states like Georgia, Nebraska, California are extremely frustrated by that, because when those reports come out, we have to spend time with legislators explaining, and a lot of other folks explaining why that doesn't make sense. We would be not good stewards of taxpayer money having 90% of something bought and not used. And I'm trying to figure out the ones that do have it, what they're using it for. The reason I say it in this context is we have a better than 1-to-1 ratio across Kentucky. Not everybody's carrying them around, but we have a better than 1-to-1 ratio already. We are the national leader in cloud-based computing. There is no other state in K-12 or government that has more services educationally that run in the cloud. Any kind of service run in the cloud. Our student information system, our financial management system, our email system, almost everything we have is in the cloud, which means we count on the internet to do that. We do a lot of things virtually through it. So I'm trying to imagine who's doing more to take up that much bandwidth.
And what are they doing?
And what are they doing? And are they doing educational things or not? Because are they really looking at it, or is it just sitting idle, which is what we can't tell. And so sometimes these reports can be used as a weapon to disparage and see, and that's why Georgia, Nebraska, and California, those that really track close what we use, I would say in Kentucky it's around 1/4 of that, maybe a little less than 1/4. So if we went just to meet that standard, we would have 75% of our bandwidth sitting idle just to meet that. And we don't, and as folks know, districts know, as you need more, we add it. And we just think that's being a good steward of taxpayer money. But when these reports come out, and that's why the ones that, like I say, the states that most closely watch this and manage it, try to be the most good stewards of taxpayer money, are the ones that are going to be most penalized by this report. And that's why they're so angry about it, is it's very misleading. So a better thing should be said, 1 meg per student, maybe by 2025, 2030 would be a better way. The 100 meg goal was a good goal.
Yeah. I
And
think speaking to the 1 meg as a forecasted expectation of, you know, that we expect over the next 5 years or whatever time frame, that this is what we're going to be observing, that this is the kind of bandwidth that's going to be required, as opposed to being identified kind of as a, I want to call it an artificial target right now.
Yeah. And just so you know, is I asked our, which state you think was the first state to reach the national goal of 100 kilobits per student? You think it was California, New York, or anybody but Kentucky? Well, it was Kentucky. Kentucky was the very first state that met that because we were very well positioned with the fiber that we already have going to all of our schools. But we are not anxious to meet the 1 meg because it would just be a waste of money. And there are states and there are districts, and this report will show like there's X number of districts that have it across the country. And I'm trying to figure out what they're doing.
And a more important statistic that's part of the education superhighway is that all our schools are connected with fiber speed connectivity.
Yeah.
Which means that the capacity there is there for us to deliver whatever bandwidth requirements exist at any given time.
Yeah.
So again, it allows us to do those upgrades that are needed as needed. So speaking back to the State Education Technology Directors Association, CETA, that group that is, they're producing a next iteration of the Broadband Imperative Report that speaks to this topic. We're part of the group in those discussions. That report is due to come out sometime early November. As David was mentioning, they're going to be presenting that to folks in Washington, D.C. and you know, several different groups. And so we're working to get that to be worded differently. We don't have a problem with saying that we forecast this is the kind of bandwidth. And some people meet it at, you know, people are going to meet it at different times depending on, you know, how they're, one, for how their instructional activities are occurring in their schools and in their districts, as well as how they have their infrastructure designed and you know, and so forth. So we're working, and the reason this is such an important topic, it goes back to the basis of the topic, David, as you were speaking to, is it's so important for people to understand what we have here in Kentucky, not only what we have, what's available, but that we are, it is built in a way to be an efficient, not only an effective model, but an efficient model. Yep. And so that's an important message, and it's important for folks, obviously all of our technology in our school districts, to understand that and to speak to that in any opportunity they have to. So.
Yep. So that we'll keep you informed of that. Like I say, you can see it is 95% of that education superhighway report I would like, but I would say, if you know, my other states that closely track it, is that and it's because it's misused. That it's misused as you're not doing something you should be doing, and actually it's the opposite. You're being good stewards of taxpayer money, and neither the CETA report nor the education superhighway report lays it out. And by the way, education superhighway was at this meeting that I was at in Minnesota with my peers, and the states that were most upset about this, they heard from that. But it's not the first time. They've heard about that. Bob, you're going to talk about, we've talked about the new K-12 passwords. We talked about the importance of cybersecurity to that in the past. And we asked a poll question a while back, is when would you like that to start? And this was this month. It was this month. I think we asked that back in May.
We did.
Okay.
And I thought it was kind of interesting that everyone chose Cybersecurity Month for that. So it's an International Cybersecurity Month. And what we will be doing, and I know we've talked a lot about why this is happening, but I do want to hit some of those reasons just again very, very briefly. David, you already mentioned that we have 4 billion attacks hitting Kentucky every year, and that's only going to increase, I'm afraid. We are doing things to try to mitigate that, but passwords are kind of where the rubber meets the road for humans and technology. It's where we interact. You know, the criminals have decided that it's really not much fun trying to hit the technology. They're going to attack the people, and this is their day job. This is what they do every day. They don't just come home from working at a steel mill and suddenly get on their computer and start trying to crack passwords and trying to get into your systems. This is what they do all day long, every day. It's their job. And so we really need to up our game, and we really haven't focused on passwords for quite a while in KDE and in KETS. And so I think it's about time for us to go ahead and try to improve our game, if you will. And not only does it make us more secure, but the changes we're making will also make things a little easier for folks to use passwords. We're also rolling out some other technologies, and districts have had access to these technologies already, such as single service or single sign-on and self-service password reset, which allows you to reset your own password if you need to. If you discover that you maybe allowed yourself to be phished, you can reset your own password and regain your security. So this month, KDE is going to be sending out to every CIO a group of documents outlining the precise new minimum requirements for staff. These aren't for students, so students get to keep the same password requirements that they have right now unless the district decides to make those changes themselves. And the documents we'll be sending out will have detail on that for the CIO, plus documents that can help the CIO inform their staff of what these changes are and how to create good, strong, safe passwords that also meet the minimum requirements. The minimum requirements really focus on three things. It's length, and it's lockout, and it's expiration. And so we're going to a longer password than we've used before. And I think a statewide password for K-12, this may be the first time that's happened in the U.S., to be honest with you. I think it is. And so we're going to 15-character minimum passphrase, and I think that shouldn't be a surprise for anyone watching this webcast, to be honest with you. We're going to require lockouts, so you can't just keep on hammering the same password over and over and over again until you crack it. And we have some evidence that that's exactly what had been happening with several of our districts and some close data breaches that have occurred in the recent past. And then expirations. Passwords, as they get older, get weaker because people use them, they accidentally expose them from time to time, and so it's just the nature of the password to kind of get a little weak. And so having a forced expiration will help reset the strength of those passwords. No matter how good that password is, we believe that there's a kind of a time limit, if you will, on how strong it remains. Now, we're also throwing some recommendations out there in addition to the minimums, and one of the recommendations that we're putting out, and I'm not going to say them all here on this webcast, but if you are a district that can take advantage of multi-factor authentication, then your minimum password requirement in terms of length, it goes down to 8 characters. And your expiration, instead of twice a year, goes to once a year. And really the goal is to make sure that the security increases. Things like MFA and single sign-on and SSPR really help end users have a more successful time authenticating to their machine and to their online resources. And so this is just a start. We really want to push towards things like biometric security, just like most people use on their phone at this point. You can use a fingerprint or a face, or you can use a PIN like you would at the ATM. So most people already have some exposure to multi-factor authentication. Whenever you go to a bank and use your card and then type in a PIN, that's a very secure process and something that everyone kind of already has a sense about how that works. And so we're really looking forward to getting this pushed out. And again, I'll be sending out final versions of documents. I do want to give a shout out to all the districts who've really been helping me through this process and helping me understand, you know, where we should be going with this, and help me understand, no, that's maybe, that's a little off in left field, you know, keep in this direction. They have really helped out, and we'll get that information out this week. And what's going to be happening is KDE is going to be setting up a new fine-grained password policy and setting it in a security group for all districts. Districts will be able to use that or use one similar that they create themselves. And all those directions and instructions will be sent out this week, so don't worry too much about it right yet. We'll get that out to you, and I'll be sending that out to all CIOs.
David, do you have any concerns about this here in Harlan County?
No, I don't. I think everybody, we have that discussion with them a lot, so
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of problems with
Okay.
with passwords.
Good. All right. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
Mentioned last webcast, OEA did a study on career and technical education. There was some that focused on education technology, specifically the KETS funds. I encourage you to take a look at that report. I included it on here. It's quite lengthy, but I think this is recommendation 2.1 to kind of take a look at as far as the KETS funding, and KETS is Kentucky Education Technology System funding. And we did write a reply to it. The vocational schools have always been part of our planning. Since 1992, we created the very first master plan for education technology up to the most current one we have from 2018 to 2024. So they've always been part of our planning and part of our consideration for education technology. So our field staff, and Judy here in Southeastern Kentucky, will be getting with you to talk to you a little bit more in depth about the results of that study, and we're trying to get a feel for the services that the district already applies to those vocational schools and provides to them that the vocational schools may not be aware of, and actually leaders may not be aware of. And so that's one of the big to-dos I have for the field staff, to get that information, to educate folks on services provided that probably most folks are not aware of. We are also in the season of collecting the top 5 feedback. This is the way, the reason that we've been able to remain relevant over the past 25 plus years is we get your feedback. So we identify what are the top 5 things we did this calendar year, what are the top 5 things we didn't do well or should have got to that we didn't get to, and what should be our top 5 goals for 2020. And so we start that process. It's due on December 1st. As you know, I read every one of those, and it really does drive what we do for the next year and how do we address things that we didn't address, and highlight things that we're doing well to a wide variety of folks. I use it during the legislative session every year. And for any group that wants to ask about how we're doing or not doing, it's a great document. So just a heads up that's, Judy, is that open now? No, we talked about just releasing it now.
Yes, we're just putting this in the form out.
Okay. I know you don't have a mic. We're just ready to send it out. So it's going to come out very soon here. I've also talked the past couple of times about esports. I've included an attachment with this that the Kentucky High School Athletic Association says they sent to every superintendent and principal. Did you get it about
Yes, sir,
esports?
I did.
Okay, all right. So the good part of that is, you've heard me talk about this, and I'll say this once again, is I'm a 1,000-year-old dad on this subject, and I am uncomfortable with combat and battle games being played from a K-12 setting. So I always say it up front, but I try to keep an open mind to the plus and minuses of this. I do feel the High School Athletic Association, they did take input from the department. And the input I wanted from them is be very blunt about the good and bad and ugly. And to their credit, it has it. So a lot of that wording is mine that you see especially about the concerns that we have associated with it. But the other part is, from the technology point of view, is we're going to be very interested in making sure we're not weakening our cybersecurity in order for the games to play. I'm trying to tell you, we're going to be very hardcore on this. Is those that create battle and combat games, any other games on the esports portfolio, is going to have to change their software to work appropriately in a K-12 setting without K-12 having to change any setting. And right now, you can see that's a blind spot that these folks that create esports games have, is they've never really had to work in a kind of actually work from a K-12 school building, because that's where the competitions actually take place at. And so we have a lot of, and so initially they were telling folks to turn things off so their game would work. And that's not the direction that we're going to go. So we're going to be very hardcore in that. We talk very bluntly about the DDoS attacks. If we see that start happening as a result of these esports games, I do think it puts it in jeopardy, especially if that happens large scale. So that's going to count on the coaches. They're making sure they're educating these students on if they get mad at a fellow student or just trying to slow them down, they're not to issue a DDoS attack, because of course that's a felony. So you're not playing just virtually. That's a real type of thing going on here. I don't remember Harlan County being part of the esports portfolio last year, as I can recall. There are 7 other states. One of the other states was with me. As Bob said, it was a highly attended session, and I would just give them, because I always tell anyone over 30 years old, as a total blind spot, that battle and combat games are considered esports for K-12. I mean, I don't care what you are, if you're technology or non-technology, it's a blind spot you have. And so I thought the document goes through also the pluses of them, as far as engaging a group of students that normally would not be engaged in your school. And that's probably the strength of it, as you take a look at them, These are students that don't keep up with sports, they're not interested in sports, they're not interested in any other extracurricular activity. This is the one thing that they're interested in, and it connects them to the school and makes them care a little bit more about their grades and their attendance to keep their eligibility just like any other athlete. So I thought the document goes through the plus and minuses of it pretty well, requires folks to look at the video. I hope folks will look at it. I hope the superintendents look at it. I hope the principals and athletic directors look at it. And I hope the parents weigh it, because there's a permission slip that's required for all of them, of the plus and minuses of it. So I do appreciate that, and like I say, that's included in here, and that's what went out like a week or two ago, and then it's good that you've seen it. So it tells me it's made it out that way. Just a reminder is we have a KISTE virtual event on October 29th. That's our Kentucky Society for Technology Education. We spent some time on that. Marty, I don't know if you want to give any more plug on that or not. I know, or maybe it's you, Jeff, you're going to give a plug on that, as well as STLP regionals that we have coming up. So go ahead, Jeff.
Awesome. So, hey, first of all, let me just say thank you to all the district and tech leaders out here who have been helping your local schools take advantage of all the STLP opportunities. We try to thank you. You know that success of STLP over these last few years really has come out of your ongoing support, your encouragement to have schools participate, sometimes your financial support, helping remove hurdles that get in the way of schools thinking that they can't participate. But also, I know that a lot of you out there mentor local STLP groups, and you come in as sort of professional connections to help talk them through how they're using their projects and how they're using technology. So I say all that because all the hard work that you've been doing really leads up to the start of my favorite time of the year, which is the STLP regional season, which will be kicking off in the next couple of weeks. Actually, we're less than 2 weeks away from our first regional. I will say we're pretty excited this year. Our registration closed last week, Friday night around midnight. We had a few stragglers, which happens every once in a while, but we're proud to say we're right around 110 districts. We have about 500 schools, a couple thousand projects signed up. So we've got a lot going on in these next few weeks. Over the course of the state, we'll be kicking off in Moorhead, then we'll be crisscrossing the state, hitting 9 different regional locations. And this year, we're also excited to be including Owensboro is a new location for us this year. So we're super pumped to get back out there, and we've had some great registrations for that area as well. So we know that was a good introduction. As folks are getting ready for regionals, we have also been introducing some new resources to help make the process of getting involved in STLP a little bit easier. From our STLP Super Sheet, which is a one-stop shop for everything, all the activities, all the categories, all the competitions, all in one basic Google Sheet that everyone can access all at one time. It helps visualize a little bit about what's going on, when deadlines are happening. It's sort of an all-in-one, all-inclusive calendar, plus access to all of our rubrics, all of our resources. So we've got that out there. And also we've introduced this year, David was mentioning earlier, how often we find ourselves relying a lot on EduSpeak and not realizing that that is not super helpful for our students or even sometimes our staff. So another new resource that we're introducing, we put out there, is our action posters, which are taking our STLP rubrics and breaking down that EduSpeak about everything we do with STLP is based on technology standards. So we've always used the ISTE student standards as the basis for all of our competitions and all of our rubrics. And so these action posters, I think you'll find, are going to help bring that into a meaningful context for students and for teachers, and just put it into a language that helps them understand what we're looking for, why we're even doing what we're doing, why STLP uses these rubrics in the first place. So be looking for that, and picking on that, the STLP rubrics being based on ISTE student standards, we're also want to make sure everyone's aware that the Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology are out for public comment, and we want to get everyone's feedback on that. So you should take a look for those, and please review those, give some feedback, help us make those be just as sharp as they can possibly be. Laura Raganoff, our Office of Digital Learning, she's one of our digital learning coaches, has been leading that effort. across the state, and we're pumped that it's a public review right now. I'm excited about it because as soon as they go official, one, that means that it's going to be the basis for everyone to, if you're using technology in the classroom, these are the standards that you will now use to measure how that technology is being used. On the STLP side, to tie it together, we are revamping every rubric that we have to base it on the Kentucky academic standards. So it's going to be even more meaningful as we talk about STLP being more than a club and being part of the curriculum in your school. Having everything in STLP tied to those Kentucky academic standards is going to make it just really easy for teachers to pick up and go with. And on top of that, that really ties into our new graduation requirement for demonstration of academic or technology proficiency. My point is STLP is perfect for that. There's great opportunities there to have students demonstrate how they use technology. And then once we tie them into those Kentucky standards, we're going to be really in great shape. So there's some good stuff going on there. I also want to point out that before we even move on too far, because I want to talk about the KISD fall event real quick. But before I get to that, a quick reminder that the STLP regionals were kicking off now. We'll go to the middle of December. But very quickly, that's second of our big 3 STLP events. So we do regionals, we do the digital product online judgments, we work our way up to state. DPOJ deadline for registration will be in January, like January 8th. So now's the time for you to encourage EdTech leaders as you're out working with students and working with districts or with your schools to encourage them to participate. Keep in mind that DPOJ deadline will be here super quick. So encourage folks to get involved with that because they can use anything that's going on in their school. If they're already using technology to demonstrate learning in the classroom, boom, there's a DPOJ product right there that they can enter, and you can be involved in STLP without ever even leaving your building. So, wrapping up, STLP is going to go pretty quick here. We're going to move in right along across the state for the next few weeks, and looking forward to seeing everyone out there. I also want to touch base on the KISD virtual event, which is happening October 29th. I'm looking at the Go Soapbox question. Are you planning to participate or join in the KISD Fall Virtual event on October 29th? And a resounding 50% say absolutely. 40% are also saying hope to. The thing about this KISD Fall event is just like DPOJ, the cool part about it is it's virtual. You don't have to pay for a sub, you don't have to pay for travel, you don't have to be out of your building, and you can still participate and get some great information from EdTech leaders from around the state. There's tons of great things already on the agenda. I would encourage you to jump out to the KISD website and take a look at the Fall Virtual Event agenda and mark it on your calendar. October 29th will be the day for that. Okay, thanks. That's STLP and the KISD Fall Event.
Thanks. Senator, just so you know, we're also trying to get legislators. We would like for them to come to these regional competitions along with the state competition. And so I know we're trying to work through the appropriate person in the department to send them out. But we're in Pikeville on December 18th at the Appalachia Wireless Arena. So may want to put that on there and see if you can join us and bring some of your fellow legislators with you. I think they'd enjoy it. It's a good chance to interact with students and to kind of see the project-based learning types of things that they're doing. Mike, let's move on to I think we've done a snapshot here because you don't have to read just what the KETS offers are, but spending a lot of time on just the IDU contract, the computer contract.
Yeah, just hitting on that, like you said, the offers of assistance are in process. Most of the districts submitted their required technology activity report. The School Facilities Construction Commission has been notified to proceed forward with that. I don't know if any districts received that yet or not. Have you all actually received that from SFCC
Not
yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, so, well, I'm assuming, I say that assuming that you got a technology activity report in. I don't really know.
Yes.
Okay, you did. So,
Yes.
so you'll be receiving that first offers of assistance shortly. And then there's some other things there on reminders of E-rate, like you mentioned, David. So those are there in the agenda. So jumping to the contract conversation, and the main one that I want to spend a little time on, and we do have a poll question out there and ask for some feedback, is that we are now proceeding forward with our efforts on new instructional device contracts.
So, Andy, can you bring up poll question 3?
Those expire.
You don't have enough going on, I know.
Those expire in June of 2020. So in order for us to have new contracts in place that will be effective immediately at that time frame, we have to have that activity in motion right now. So so we do want to receive feedback. I've had multiple conversations with some different groups now with the field engineers. We want to make sure that we're getting feedback from the districts. So I've been looking at the poll questions there as we've been going along, and I'm seeing that obviously the highest percentage there say that yes, having the enterprise device contracts and not including the consumer grade devices is working well. But by the same token, there is some percentage there that's saying that that they would like to have the consumer grade devices. That's the second answer, which has 12%, and then we obviously have 24% that says they're not sure, and they kind of, I view that as they're kind of good either way. What I would ask is, and I'll make sure that our field engineer group also follows up on this, but if you are in a position where you feel strongly that there's some consideration that needs to be made about some changes to how we're doing this, that you do get that information to your CATS engineer quickly. And I would say quickly meaning this week. Because I want that feedback, I need that feedback immediately, because again, we've got to work on getting the request for purchase to establish these new contracts, the RFP process in motion pretty soon. And so we do need that feedback quickly. I did see some comments in the comments section where there were some examples given of where they were aware, like in another state, where people were getting better cost, better pricing for consumer grade devices because there was a contract vehicle in place that had been established on behalf of K through 12. And so we're aware that some other states have done that, and we've looked at those. For the most part, we have not seen tremendous advantages to that. You certainly have to look at what's included with them and not included with them and so forth. But that's important information for us to have. We need those examples of where, things that would support why we need to, think about maybe doing some differently on this next iteration of our CATS contracts. I'm trying to bring up here real quick while I'm talking those comments that we had received about potentially specific
David,
changes.
if you'd had answered on that, what would have been your answer?
And yeah, I was going to say, let's make sure. So on the instructional devices, are you good with the way they are now, and the consumer grade devices are not part of our CATS contracts?
I don't like the consumer grade to be part of it.
You would, so your answer would be that you would like for it to remain separate,
So
like
they've
it
been
is
part of
now.
that 65%.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're part of that group, yeah. So do provide these comments to us. Another was to ensure to keep the 3-year warranty as a requirement, to include the HDMI and USB 3 ports as a standard. Those are good comments for us to receive, things we want to make sure that we're thinking about and we're including in the next iteration of these contracts. So, obviously, the CATS instructional device contracts is like a foundational contract as part of the CATS program. I mean, it's something that's been a solid part of what we've been doing. It balanced the availability and the cost of these devices to all school districts, all schools in the state, regardless of where you are. So therefore, we really did maximize the buying power of all K through 12 as a whole. So we continue to see that as being a huge leverage point. Obviously want to make sure that we make whatever minor adjustments we want to make. But for the most part, I think the general feedback we get is that it's worked well, it continues to work well, and we want to continue to do it pretty similarly to how we've been doing it. But if there's some room for little tweaks and things, we'll certainly want to do that. So while we're talking here, and so if there's any other comments, do you got any other thoughts on that topic at all, David?
Good.
Let me hit on some other contracts that we have going on here. We kind of got them listed out here, and I don't know if we need to say a whole lot more than what we have documented in the agenda. Obviously, the voice contracts expiring in February 2020. We're not doing new contracts. We are going to be sharing a set of guidelines and standards that should be followed in securing voice services in schools. So that will be coming out. We are pursuing new contracts for server and storage, and that's in process. And then we are also in process of establishing a new contract or new set of contracts for infrastructure as a service. And so that will be available for schools to use as well as for us to use at the department level. And that is essentially securing just what it says, infrastructure, where it is a service model where you're not buying the equipment, you're not maintaining the equipment, you're buying that functionality as a service. And so we're in the process of pursuing that being put into place as well. And then other ones that we've mentioned, the school food service point of sale, that request for proposal is in process. Not posted or anything out there yet, but you'll be seeing that, so you want to stay in touch and in tune with that. I mentioned that last webcast, I know. And then a huge one for everybody is the educator certification and ethics system. And again, that one's well in the depths of being in process as well. Will be out and posted before too long, and that's going to have huge, that's going to be a huge initiative as we pursue forward with that.
The nice part about that one, there are a couple other states that have done that, Nebraska and Delaware, that have been very helpful on what and how they approached it, and actually Nevada as well. So we're taking some lessons learned from that. And just this is a teaching point for folks. Is, you know, I think the CATS computer contract was the very first one we did back in the early 90s, 1993. But we always try to see, you know, is the contract we're doing at state level, does that add relevance and importance to school districts? So that's why we ask for your feedback. And so you can see some changes. There's some things we're not going to keep on doing bids for, because we can see at the state level what's being purchased and not purchased. And we can see the amount of phone services, the traditional on-prem systems, has plummeted across the state. The printers was the same kind of situation. So it did no added value to do that with such a sliver of purchases going in that direction. So, but there are a couple other items that you've told us that it is important to continue, and so we're going to continue those on. So that's the kind of the teaching point associated with this. Yep. Is there anything else that bubbles up? I'm going to turn it back to Frankfurt to kind of do a couple of closeout. One is for Phil to cover some things he may want to cover, and Dee, anything that from the data side we didn't get covered. Is there anything that bubbled up from the Go Soapbox that you addressed before I do that transition? As you guys were looking at,
I'm getting back to it here where we had the comments.
So I'll do this, is we'll go back to Phil. I'll let you go ahead. You had a couple items here. You don't have to cover all those or some of them, but just we've covered some of these in the past webcasts. Is there any update you'd like to give from some of the items from your perspective?
Just real quick, the KDE Notify app that we've supported for about 10 years, we did announce that we were going to retire the mobile part of that, but there's also a portal to that a web portal that we support and keep populating, keep updated. So Matt, Jury, and I put together, well, actually Matt put it together, a really nice survey that went out to Region 7 and Region 8 to see, you know, how are they using that? Do they depend on that for updates and those kinds of things? And surprisingly, the number of people or school districts that actually depended on that service was really, really small. And so keep in mind, the alternatives are, as they noted, to depend on the kids' help desk calling them or their kids' engineer. But really, the mobile app was to cover the times that we're not open. So it's to cover holidays and nights and weekends and those kinds of things. So when we don't have a help desk that can actually call the school district, or the KE might be asleep or something. So just kind of keep that in mind, that we will want to send that survey probably out to the rest of the state just to kind of get a feel for it. If you feel strongly about that, just let us know, and we'll certainly take that into consideration.
Kate being asleep is during the night hours, not all the time. So our keys, we do allow them to sleep, but that's not going to happen at 3 in the morning. Get the update. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Right. And really, I think the important thing for a school district, David, is when a CIO or district technician, or technology leader wakes up in the morning, they need to know, is my network up and running, or did I have a disaster, overnight? So, and that really causes them to spin things a little bit different way. And so we just, 10 years ago, we felt really passionate about making sure that they were all notified, in a timely manner. So I'm not sure that this technology is relevant anymore, but we want to, poll you guys and really kind of figure it out and take a look at it. So the other thing I had, David, I guess Mike can chime in on this also, was the status of our Ken switch upgrade project. We are just starting that. We've done some pilots, and we are scheduling now with your kids engineer. So if you have questions about that and the schedule and things like that, you can contact them. But we're speeding that up pretty quick, and hopefully we'll be doing that like we do most projects, and try to do that in non-instructional hours so that we have the least impact on the classroom.
So one comment I'll add to that, Phil, is obviously our goal would be to have a very clear and obvious schedule as far as when districts can anticipate things happening. But there will be equipment that's going to be coming to the district, shipped to the equipment. So be alert and pay attention and watch for that, because you should know ahead of time when that's coming, but we can't really necessarily guarantee you're going to know ahead of time when that's coming. So I would hope that in every district, as the technology leader, that you kind of have all your folks know if some kind of piece of technology comes in, bring it to your attention. But for sure, be on the notice that will. And again, once we publicize that schedule, and some of you all may already know where you're going to be at in that schedule because those conversations have been going on, but there's not an official publicly listed this is where you're at in a list that's out there and I can point you to look at it. But hopefully we'll have that, and you'll have an idea more when you're going to have this equipment coming in. But just be aware of that. All districts be aware that there is a piece of equipment that will be coming to your district, and the goal should be that it's coming to your attention, or that you know it's coming, you know when it's coming, and so forth. But we haven't necessarily got that working as smooth as it should just yet. And I know, Judy, you were pointing out to an example to me where that had happened.
And also, Mike, there's actually more than one piece of equipment. There'll be 3 or 4 different boxes of arriving.
Okay, so it comes in, so
Three or four different boxes for those that can.
Yeah.
So Dee Dee, what else do we need to cover on the data side to kind of close us out here that we didn't already cover that you want us to know?
Just a quick update, Infinite Campus Interchange, the registration link went out last week, so keep that in mind and share that information within your schools and districts. We usually have very good participation. That's a really good opportunity to find out, the latest information on things that Infinite Campus is supporting, as well as how districts are using Infinite Campus, maybe a little differently than your district. But I know I get questions about EdFi and different kind of tools, and that's the type of stuff that Infinite Campus is the best person to cover, and that is an opportunity to kind of find out about those interoperability of the systems and functionality that's available within Infinite Campus. Another thing I want to mention is that if you didn't have folks that were able to go to the user group sessions, the information that KDE presented there is available in campus communities, so help pass along that information. We also have a civil rights data collection. Right now, it's out for a comment period on some new proposals for collections. So if you've got somebody with interest that keeps up with all that and they haven't seen that, reach out to me and I can share that link. We are still in the comment period, so take advantage of your opportunity to say, what's feasible and not feasible for that collection. That's gone from being a collection of some schools to all schools, and it's every other year still. One other comment on school report card, and that's just to double check your links. Every school and district should have links to the school report card. I have seen some that didn't get updated. So when they link, they're still going to the 2018 card, the 17-18 card. And I know it's just a click difference, but if you actually include it in your URL, the whole 2018, you need to update that to 2019. So it's going to the current year versus the prior year. A parent may not realize they can go up there and change years. That's all I've got, David.
All right, thank
So on Go Soapbox, we had a variety of questions in. I think we've addressed them all online. I don't know if there's any we need to necessarily bring up for discussion. Bob did addressed a few different ones regarding password. There were several different questions there, and I think you've addressed them all online. So do refer to that, folks, and we'll have those as part of the follow-up and summary notes. And so the only last comment I want to make before you go to close out and everything is that I'm going to be having a moon pie right here in a little bit.
Don't let John Logan see it.
Yeah.
So next month, we will be in Trigg County Schools, and I did send a summary of our webcast last month from Dayton Independent Schools. I encourage you to take a look at that. But we had a great time here in Harlan County Schools, so thank you for being the host.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. Any final words?
We appreciate you and your staff for coming down today.
Yeah.
It's an honor for us to host you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate Mr. Turner's coming. Appreciate our newest board member for showing up today and showing support for us.
I want to thank the students for showing up today.
Yeah.
And kind of showing me what I wish my life had been if I could be in their shoes. That's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
David, I'd just like to say that I don't think it's luck that Kentucky is #1 in some of these areas and categories. I think it's because of the hard work from you and the people that you surround yourself with that causes that to happen.
Yep, I agree.
I second
I
that.
agree.
I know that.
Got some good players on the team.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next month from Trigg County. Take care.